Podcast Network's family of shows. Available everywhere podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. And for our fourth segment of the day here, going to be talking a little bit about some players and some interesting prop bets to consider for this weekend. We talked a lot about the games and what they could mean in terms of the playoff picture and things of that nature, but I want to talk about certain players, whether or not they're in playoff contention or not, because this is a very interesting weekend, like I said, in terms of interdivisional play, interconference play, and how it could all shake out in the short-term future for these teams, no matter who they are. And so I wanted to try and diversify this segment enough so that I'm paying attention to all different kinds of players and teams and situations, rather than just focus on the big stars that you feel like will be safe bets week in and week out. So without further ado, let's jump right into it, starting off with a guy who is definitely not a safe bet and could definitely still shake up the NFL landscape for the long-term future, actually. And that is Tommy DeVito. Let's talk about him a little bit. Being named the QB1 for the Giants for this game in favor of Daniel Jones. And in this one, let me check actually who they are playing, because I actually forgot here. I feel like Tommy DeVito, though, is a guy who has a little bit more upside and moxie to his game than Daniel Jones. They're playing the Bucs here, which could be a very weird game because the Bucs are also going to bring it after their bye week. They want to make a run to the playoffs. But the Giants, though, they're mainly playing for pride, and that's why I feel like Tommy DeVito could be someone to shake things up a little bit. So I'm going to take the over in terms of passing touchdowns for him. At 0.5, seems like too low a total for a guy who has proven he can be a competent backup in this league. But I still feel like in terms of the Giants' outlook, this is a team that's not as bad as their record shows, and they're going to play with heart down the stretch here. I know that a lot of people are going to be saying, well, the Giants are doing this to position themselves well in the draft so they can go out and draft a Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward, but no, I think this was really a move, in order to preserve some cap space, to either move on from Daniel Jones or to prevent him from injury, or to actually try and compete down the stretch. And Tommy DeVito can certainly do that with his style of play. So in a tough game, right, against the Bucs coming off their bye, look for Tommy DeVito to want to match their energy and throw for over 0.5 touchdowns. And now let's go and stick in the NFC East with the Philadelphia Eagles. How about let's talk about Saquon Barkley here, because this is an interesting matchup for the Eagles. The Rams' defense is a defense that's grown into its own from front to back. I feel like these two rookie ends here, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, are going to try and generate as much pressure as possible on this team, potentially resulting in not a big day for Saquon, potentially forcing him out of his comfort zone a little bit, forcing this Eagles team out of its comfort zone. I still think they'll pull off the win, like I said, but we're going to see it not necessarily be as pretty as possible. So that's why I think Saquon's going to hit the under this week, 96.5 rush yards. Certainly seems like kind of a long shot, but because Saquon has been over-exceeding expectations in his first season with Philly. But this just feels like one of those games where a lot of different things could happen for different units. And I feel like the Rams' defense is in its stride right now. And so it's going to be difficult for a guy like Saquon to really get going against it. It's not an indictment of him, but I just feel like it's going to be a weird week for certain players in the Philly offense. So that's why I'm taking the under here for Saquon here in this one. Now let's talk about some receiving talent here. Let's talk about one of my favorite receivers in the National Football League, on my personal fantasy football team, Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just someone who's always been a reliable receiver for the Detroit Lions, proving that his first-team All-Pro status last year was not a fluke. maintaining his connection with Jared Goff and proving to be one of the premier wide receivers in the NFL. Going up, though, against a very interesting defense here in the Indianapolis Colts. Very interesting defense in terms of its depth, in terms of its fearsomeness, in terms of what it can do to certain offenses that might not expect it. This is a top 10 unit disguised as a top 15 unit, if that makes sense, because I feel like they're better than what their record shows and the teams that they've had to play against show in terms of matchups, because there had some tough matchups, but they've really proven, even in losses, that they are a premier defense. This is a tough task for them, and I mentioned that it could be a surprising upset this game, but I still think the Lions just have enough on offense to overwhelm them, and Amon-Ra is a big part of that. So that being said, as much as I respect the Colts defense, look for Amon-Ra to hit the over in terms of passing yards at 77.5. I just feel like he's in his stride right now. Him and Jared Goff's rapport is unmatched in the National Football League. I don't think there's a better QB wide receiver duo right now, in my humble opinion. And I know that's weird to say because we have a lot of intriguing QB wide receiver duos, a lot of exciting, fearsome ones around the NFL, but when they click, they click. And Amon-Ra's just one of those guys who might not be flashy, but is certainly reliable enough to, week in, week out, maintain his consistency. And I don't see it falling off anytime soon. So I'm taking the over. No, it's a weird matchup. No, I'm giving all respect to the Colts in this one, but Amon-Ra is just too much of a consistent matchup nightmare for NFL teams that I can't see him hitting the under. And now let's talk about an exciting tight end who finally, last week, had a breakout game against Miami, and going into this tough divisional matchup against the Broncos, will look to continue his hot streak here. Brock Bowers. I really think that what with this new offensive coordinator in Las Vegas, what with him trying to get more involved in this offense, even against another tough, physical, surprising defense in the Denver Broncos, he's going to have a big day. It might not be enough to win the football game for the Raiders on Sunday, but I feel like it will be enough to hit the over in terms of receiving yards here. So look for Brock Bowers to have another big day, hitting the over in terms of receiving yards at 59.5. He's just someone who's going to be a special talent for years to come. And we're starting to see it come to fruition in this down year for Las Vegas, because in the long-term future, say the Raiders want to go all in with a quarterback in this draft. Say they want to go all in on a guy like Shedeur Sanders. They're setting themselves up for success, and they're setting Brock Bowers, most importantly, up for success, because it was a risky pick taking a guy like Brock Bowers at high. But he really is versatile enough to let me to believe that he's going to be a star in this league. And so, what I want to see from him in terms of the rest of the season is continuing to elevate his game no matter how rocky it gets. And if he can prove that he is able to do that, then this Raiders team can get exciting in a hurry if they go all in and draft a guy like Shedeur in the 2025 draft. But for now, look for Brock Bowers to continue to grow in his rookie season to get to that point, because it's going to be excitingly magical in Las Vegas should that duo come to fruition, Sanders and Bowers. It's going to be a fearsome one if it happens, but for now, he's going to hit the over his rookie season against a divisional opponent. And then last but not least, I want to go back to another quarterback here, one of the hottest quarterbacks, actually, in the National Football League over the past couple of weeks. How about Justin Herbert? And he's in Monday night primetime yet again to take on the Ravens to kind of separate themselves from, that middle tier of teams. Like I said, the Bills and Chiefs, a tier of their own. And those teams in the middle, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Chargers, the Texans. This is a game to separate themselves. I think the Chargers might actually have the upper hand, even though Baltimore is the favorite in this one. I really like what they did against the Bengals. They really shocked me with the play on offense and defense, at least in the first half. You obviously, I let it slip a little bit in that second half, but I still like this team. And I think that Justin Herbert's a player who has been coming into his own, and he's going to hit the over yet again against that pretty bad Ravens secondary. Look for him to really get going in this one and hit the over at 240.5 pass yards to really stand out. As we're going to conclude this segment here with a comment from Tap to Learn. Raiders Broncos always a rock fight. I like the upset getting 6 points with the Las Vegas. We'll see, because that Broncos defense certainly is feisty. But who knows? It is a divisional game, and I really think the Raiders, if they can get Bowers going, could be in it. And so I really respect that opinion. But we do have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have to talk a little bit more about this Sunday Night Football match, a big one in the NFC between the Eagles and the Rams. So don't go anywhere.